Good morning, Norcal Carters. Today we have a special podcast, and our special guest is Sonny Cervelli. And this guest is, the timing couldn't be perfect. Recently, I've been posting on Norcal Carters page on Facebook and in the podcast that I'm promoting an internship for mechanics, and it's not paid, but if you want to work in karting, it's a great way to see if it's a right fit for you, learn the trade. And Sonny, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. Hey, Jason. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, let's get the congratulations out of the way. Congratulations on your new position with Gary Carlton and GFC Karting. You are the director of operations now.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I appreciate it.
So I know you're not going to be the one to talk about yourself, so which is what I like about you. If that was me, everyone on social media would have known that Jason Berry was the director of operations, because I would have told everybody. I would have tagged the mailbox, everything. But then you just kind of took it. It's like you told me last week, yep, I've been working hard for something like this. And yeah, so thank you for joining us.
Yeah, of course. No worries. I'm always happy to talk about go-karting. So,
that's right.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of bounce all over the place, kind of a Pulp Fiction style. So let's start with right now, Director of Operations, GFC Karting. So what is your actual role?
Okay. So my role as Director of Operations within Team GFC is to really just being there full-time with Gary, kind of by his side, or whether I need to go and represent GFC at another location. At the same time, he's in another place. It's kind of doing that, really. Gary, as he started, has been the only real main full-time guy behind the scenes. And as he's grown, obviously there's a lot more that needs to get done. And now with having me there full-time, it just allows him and I to focus our time better with where we need to put the time, really. Anything from taking customers out to the track to being there to set up, cleaning, prepping, all of it, really. I'm just kind of there now to assist him where he needs me.
And that's one thing I have noticed about you. Especially the past couple of races where I had the chance to work under your guys' tent. You're there when you're setting up. You're there when you're tearing down, and you may or not be directly working with one specific driver during the weekend, but your hands are in every aspect of Gary's program. I mean, you're running around grabbing parts. You're helping with driver coaching. You're making sure everything is taken care of underneath the tent that Gary can't jump to. And when I heard the announcement that, you're full time with Gary, it's like, what better person? There is no better person for that role. Just a few months ago, you were traveling over the country with different teams and everything else. So, you're a workhorse. Yeah,
I like to be busy, and to be honest with you, I love go-karting. So in a way, when I'm at all these races working and I'm busy, there's really nowhere else I'd rather be. So it doesn't always seem like work, rather than it's just a bunch of fun trips over and over again. So it's easy for me to want to stay busy.
Yeah, and you do a great job at it. You yelled at me a few times to empty the trash can or go grab a broom or something. It's like, well, I kind of want to just hand out margaritas.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily. Yeah, honestly, I think we need to take out garbage and brooms. My kind of personality, I'm just gonna get the broom. I'm gonna start sweeping. I'm gonna take out the trash myself. I like to stay busy, so.
Yeah, no, and it's great. It's so. Like I said, we're gonna bounce all over the place.
Okay.
Last year I know you were working with a number of different teams all over the country, and
correct.
You definitely seem to find your place under Gary's team a lot more often. Let's be honest, with how fast Gary's whole, not just his team, but his business, his list of drivers, his dealer network, how fast it's grown. It's truly impressive that he's try to do it this long by himself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Obviously, he's very capable and hasn't missed a beat doing it by himself so far up to this point. I know he's got his guys that have helped him behind the scenes and everything as well, with, just lending a hand from me and just other dealers. And it's kind of everyone working together. But yeah, it is. I always get that from people like, man, is it just Gary doing that in his van, or this and that, and running this big old team? It's pretty cool to see one guy, be determined enough from the beginning to really create something that's really taken the scene quite rapidly.
Yeah, I mean, and then all of it too. I mean, I've seen a couple of his posts on Instagram with some of your, I want to say a couple of the junior drivers. Then you have, Cole Shade, the Track Magic Factory driver. And, their glamorous job on Monday after a race is mopping the floors of the tents.
Yeah, exactly. It's cool. It in a way reminds me of myself when I was their age, just kind of wanting to be at the go-kart shop no matter what, even if it meant mopping the tent floors or scrubbing the tents or sweeping racks. It's super cool to see the kids there and helping. And again, all the people behind the scenes do make a difference for sure.
Yeah, and you and I go way back. I mean, I remember back at the Kinsman Kart Club races back in 2006 to 2008, somewhere right around there. I was driving the 125 stuff, and here's this little kid with a Go Girl energy drink standing at the scales. He's all, "Here you go, Jason. Here's an energy drink," and it's always those little memories that just make me laugh. And that little kid was Sonny Cervelli. And
yeah,
here you are now, all grown up and an adult.
Yeah, I know. Crazy how that happens.
It is. But that's a great story. It's your racing program. It was you, your mom, and your dad at the local
Correct.
kart tracks.
The first several years, that's what it was.
And you guys just plugged away and just worked hard, plugged away. I mean, speaking of working hard, I know your mom, she was an instrumental part of the Kinsman Kart Club board for a number of years, and that's always a thankless, is that the right word? Thankless task when you're on a board?
Sure, that sounds right.
But I know she was, helping to promote, the club at different car shows and things like that. And more recently, at Sonoma, setting up the tents, there's your dad out there helping, doing that unglamorous work of, sweeping the tarps before they go on the ground and setting up the poles and all this stuff. And that should put a smile on your face. Like, your family unit is still intact and at the track.
Oh, of course. I mean, at most of the races at Sonoma, I'll see my parents come out at least on race day, to just come and watch because they enjoy it so much. And they've kind of really we've made such great friends and really lifelong friends at the track. So it is cool. And, my mom and dad are always happy to help me or my, their friends, whatever they need. So when we need some extra hands out at the track on setup day, my dad's always more than happy to come out and help us. Yeah.
Yeah, I see him out there all the time, helping. And, no, it's great. So let's.
Yeah, it is cool to see.
It is cool. So let's go back to Sonny Cervelli, not the director of operations for GFC, but let's go to your early years of karting. I think it's important for people to know that you race karts, and as the new generations come in, the mechanics, pretty much all the mechanics out there were or are racers.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about some of your early career highlights. And they don't have to be victories or anything else, but just good memories that just stand out. Like what's one or two of them?
Good memories for me. Obviously, I'm not like the most nationally decorated driver. I always felt I did good in the situations I was in. Probably some of the biggest things for me was in 2009. It was just me and my dad running on an Emmett go-kart. We had actually won 2 Duffys for the IKF Grand Nationals, which at the time was a really huge deal to us. That kind of helped me realize that maybe we could take it a bit more serious and do a lot more national racing. And I think it just got everyone in my family a bit more excited about my racing. Some other opportunities and things for me that have really been highlighted really is just getting to meet the Pickett family was another great one, through my good buddy Harrison Mills. He was working with Hunter Pickett as his, kind of driving karting manager, mechanic, everything. I got to meet them and started racing with them for a couple of years. That's been another great highlight, is just meeting that family and getting to work and be around all the people I like. So, like I said, it's not for me necessarily all these races I won or certain things like that. It's more just the people, I've met throughout that kind of highlighted, I think.
Yeah, that's such a valid point. And that's why I kept coming back to karting. I miss the people. I miss the environment. Now I'm in my 40s. Like, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to, stay around karting as long as I can, for those exact reasons. All those relationships that just develop, and it's our chosen family, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. For me, looking back, it's the regional or national podiums, wins, poles, results. Those are all great. In the moment, those feel good, but for real, 10 years later, it's a trophy. But the friends I've made along the way and things like that, they last forever. So it's really what I appreciate the most, probably.
Yeah, and I remember last year you and I had a conversation, and your goal or your vision for yourself was pretty resolute. It was, I want to be with one of the best teams full time. I mean, that was really what you wanted to do. And you went to school, right? You went to Indiana, you went to machinist school?
Correct.
And so this is after that took place. And here you are, full-time job with Gary Carlton. Can you pinpoint any specific thing that just makes you have that desire just to be around the karting stuff? Is there, we talked about the family, the friends, the relationships. Do you enjoy the sense that you're, again, Gary, you're almost spoiled because on any given weekend, his drivers are standing on the podiums. There's also a sense of accomplishment. It's like, yeah, I'm a part of a winning team.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. Yeah. I would say that for me, being at the karting track and wanting to be there, it's as simple as I always joke with my friends that we're all at the track and we're all racing go-karts and we all like it. But I always have said, I'm a go-kart nerd. I live for go-karting. It's all I ever read about. We'll be at the go-kart track working for 14-hour days or 14 hours a day. And as soon as I hop in the van to leave after a week of racing, me and Gary are sitting there talking about go-karting. We just both don't get sick of it. So I'd like to think that for me, I was so focused on wanting to be in go-karting just because really it's what I care about so much. I had done machining and I enjoyed it. But when I started to work in go-karting and I kind of got that feeling of working and doing something I truly had a passion for, I just really grabbed a hold of it and then got really focused on trying to make it a reality.
So did you feel like after doing the machining thing and trying it out that did it just feel like a job? Like you're just, I'm just collecting a paycheck?
No, I really enjoyed machining and I still do. But the side of machining I really enjoyed was the creating side and prototyping and creating fixturing and doing the challenge of the day, right? Trying to figure out how to make this part, how to not make a tool break. And some days, in machining and sometimes for months straight, you'd just be more of an operator running a machine. And I didn't necessarily feel challenged. And the thing I really loved about go-karting is that every day was something different. Every day there was a new mechanical gremlin or, a corner that your driver couldn't figure out. And I just always love having the challenge every day. There's not a lot of days you're at the go-kart track and you're just the fastest every single session and everything's working perfect, as you know. So,
well, if you're the fastest every single session, every single race, you're probably need to level up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, If you're not competitive all the time, you're always struggling. Maybe you need to level down and go back to the club race stuff for a while.
Yeah, of course. I think nowadays that's a big thing that people don't always realize is they don't need to go national racing right away. There's plenty of things to be learned at your club and your regional levels.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just you've been at all. We just talked about it. You've been at all levels of it. Maybe you can explain to people the difference between if you were to go to a local club, let's say, Blue Max or Kinsman or Prairie City, versus you're on a plane flying out to whatever state for whatever national tour. What are the differences from your perspective do you see right off the bat between, and you could generalize, between the club racing and the national races?
The main thing is obviously the level of competition. The budgets are also a bit different, but that's not really what I would like to highlight because you can always see people perform at any kind of budget in go-karting. That's why I love it. It's really the intensity as well. At the club races, there's a lot more focus on, we're racing, we're learning, but it's a lot of, say the kids and stuff having fun. And like any sport would be, the higher level you compete at, it just gets a little more intense. So I think when the drivers are ready and if they're serious, I think national racing is the place to go when you're really trying to become one of the best. But if it's a thing where you're just wanting to have fun with your family, there's levels for everything, and some people like to go national racing and some don't. It's not for everyone, but it's kind of all what you make of it. And that's why I like go-karting really, is there's so many different ways to do it and have fun with it.
There's a lot. Yeah. And sometimes I feel, and I've said this on the podcast before, that certain, I don't want to be disparaging when I say this. So I got to be very careful with my words. But you and I have been around a certain level of karting for so long. It seems like if you walk into the known shops or the known teams, they really are, their business model is to be at a regional or national event. That's their business model.
Okay.
And I feel like the guy that just gets into karting that has no idea what the bolt pattern is on his go-kart. He doesn't know if it's a 40 millimeter axle, 50 millimeter axle, or 1.25 inch axle. Like those guys, they're brand new. I have a go-kart. Everything's interchangeable. It's like, no, wrong. Hold the brakes. I feel like as our industry, there's not a lot of service for that type of customer. How do you feel about that?
To be honest, I haven't been at a lot of the local club races at a lot of these tracks in a while to know exactly who's kind of there with some wisdom to help some of the newer guys. I would say, you go to places like Prairie City, and I know there's Donald Durbin runs the track now, and there's a bunch of people I think actually in the area I would think that are happy to help. I just don't know if necessarily it seems so open to these new guys, right? I think there's a bit sometimes of intimidation maybe, and I don't know. I personally think that there's plenty of people to track. Maybe it's not teams, but people there that'll definitely help.
I think the individuals are there at the local stuff. But as far as just an industry, that shop, with the exception of Donald, now that, he has his shop at the track. That's going to be, I don't know. I guess,
like I said, I haven't been completely intertwined with all the local shops and kind of their programs to know exactly what's going on, but I could see your point.
Yeah, it's different. It just, I've been on all sides of it. I consider myself right now as that Thursday guy that just wants to go out and do my 20 to 40 laps and go home.
Gotcha.
But then here I am on a weekend working for one of the better teams out there. It's it's kind of a not double-edged sword, but maybe a little two-faced on my part.
Yeah, gotcha.
So let's talk. So we talked about. Let's talk about your favorite. If you were to sit back and go, you know what? If I was to pick my favorite class, my favorite engine, because of the racing. In your opinion, what is it from your perspective as a driver?
Oh man, that's a tough one. As far as the racing goes, just the fun of the racing, as big of a pain as the engines were, I felt the Comer 80 racing I did in my cadet years was some of the closest and some of the most fun, just because of the momentum involved in being fast and how close that made the racing. I definitely enjoyed when I ran Leopard Junior, because we were on the MG Yellow at the time, and that was my first real experience at a super soft tire.
Okay.
And that was also a blast for me to learn and drive, just being able to attack so hard. But yeah, I'd say probably the Comer 80s are some of my best memories of just good hard racing.
And is that because it was? I mean, when you raced Comer 80s, there was large fields.
Yeah.
The fields were pretty tight. Anything else that adds to that on why that class really stands out?
I don't know. Maybe a bit now looking back, like the nostalgia of it, right? Now everyone's in the 60cc kind of touch and go. It's just like the modern age of karting. Yep. I feel like that was still a bit old school, even for its time it was being ran.
That's true. Yeah, because you were kind of on that cusp. But what would have been, it's Gazelle or Puma, right? Would have been kind of about that same time frame of the newer technology coming in and fading out the Comer stuff?
Yeah, I think so. That stuff just never really took hold in Northern California.
It didn't.
And like I said, I mean, at my younger age, until really 13 or 14, I never ventured really out of Northern California. I didn't, go travel to other regions.
So when did you start traveling, whether as a driver or as a mechanic?
I definitely started traveling as a driver first. I would say, I think my first years of doing some national racing, traveling around, was 2011 or 2012, running the Pro Tour in the junior categories and doing a little bit of Challenge of the Americas racing here and there as well. And as a mechanic, I did a lot locally, growing up. And then I probably didn't start traveling as a mechanic until around 2014 or 2015.
Okay. And then what are some of the teams or experiences? We'll name a couple of the teams you worked with, and then what are some of those memories or experiences that stand out specifically as a traveling mechanic?
Yeah, some of the teams I've worked with in the past, I mean, actually, I worked a lot with Austin Elliott and Harrison Mills at Speed Sense back in the day, kind of when that team was getting going. I put a lot of attention into that team, I lived with Austin for a while, basically in his couch, helping him start up that. And, I've worked with him. I've worked the later years. I worked with a bunch of different national teams across Southern California. And recently I worked in the last year, started working with a driver at Rawlison Performance Group. So that's another huge team, and recently now Gary and Tony at Formula Works. But I've been with a bunch of different tents over the years. So
yeah, I actually didn't realize how much you were traveling over the past couple of years till, you and I kind of caught up towards the end of last year. It's like, man, Sonny's been all over the place. I mean, you were in Florida, you were everywhere. I mean, you were just I just got back from this race. Oh, I just got back from that race. And, I mean, you have to love it to travel that much.
Oh, I do. I 100% love it. There are times, when I come home and I unpack my suitcase, put it in the washing machine, dry my clothes, fold them, and put them right back in the suitcase and go to the next place for 3 weeks. But, I mean, I do love it, Even if sometimes I might complain or say I want to go home, I try not to be too loud about it because I do love my job and I'm grateful for it. So,
yeah. That, I think we all have that. Those moments when you're around it long enough. Challenge of the Americas, the Fontana event, especially for the GFC tent. That had to push everybody. You, Gary, drivers, customers, parents. That event had to just push them to the edge. You were down there on Tuesday setting up Gary's tents, and
Yep.
Mother Nature pulled them down for you guys on Wednesday.
Yeah, that was definitely a strenuous week for sure. But I mean, we all pushed through. I think we all as a team did a really good job that weekend of just keeping focused on what we were there to do, not really worry about tents, right? The tents were gone. It was just focusing on customer satisfaction and getting everyone fast to win the races, and the tents we figure out when we leave.
Yeah. And that was just such a weird but great memory for me because, here we are Wednesday. It's like, okay, we're tearing down the tents. It was windy. It was hot. You're just getting bombarded by the environment. And I remember thinking on Tuesday, it's like, man, these tents are kind of a pain in the ass. Is it really worth it? And then on Wednesday, I'm sitting there going, man, I wish I had a tent. And then the community, the karting community. I mean, you had, let's see, it was Ruthless Karting, Christian Bird Racing, P1 Racing Engines. They all came over with tents and just dumped them off and said, here, use our tents and canopies. And what was it, that following Thursday or Friday, we all showed up early to start rebuilding the pits?
Yeah, that is exactly what happened. I mean, that's all people reaching out to us before we even thought we were going to try and set up tents. People were already coming to us. That's the karting community right there in a nutshell.
Yeah, and it was just even the staff with Challenge of Americas. They were over, helping, trying to keep things. For those who don't know, it looked like someone drove a bulldozer only through Gary's pit and put everything into a one pile. And it was just a disaster. But I remember Nicole from Challenge of the Americas. She's over in what was my work area, and my tools are all over the ground because we all had the table set up. My toolbox fell off, and here she is trying to put everything in a pile, knowing that it's like, okay, she's been around karting forever. She understands that this is a complete mess, but at least if I could put this pit's tools on this cart mat, etc. And I think the only casualty of lost inventory I had were my sweet tarts.
No.
I think that was it. And everyone kept asking where the sweet tarts come from throughout the weekend. But I didn't miss this. I was not missing a single tool, nothing. And it's like, man, this is... And again, that was just staff members from Challenge of the Americas coming over to help. It's like, okay, you guys got a real big mess on your hands. How can we help? And that memory, I hope that whole memory stays with me for a while, because at the end of it, there was that night. Remember, we had the easy ups up, and then you're sitting on top of Travis Irving's shoulders and trying to take the cover off the easy up because those things were going to blow away. But we needed the easy up because the lights were strapped to the easy up so you guys could work on the carts. And that was 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Just making do with what we got. I again, the Challenge America's crew helping with all that was super good to see. And yeah, it just made everything a lot less stressful in the moment, to get everyone on track. I mean, like I was saying before, same kind of point is, we showed up. I didn't find out about the tents being blown apart, until I got a phone call when I was getting ready in the morning to leave the hotel. And I was the first to tell Gary and everyone. And we got there, and within 2.5 hours, we had a mess cleaned up, and our drivers were on track. No one missed their first session. No one really lost anything, and we went right to it. So
yeah. I think cart-wise, I think the only damage that I saw was one of the carts that Gary was renting out to a shifter guy. The rim broke.
Yeah, gotcha.
I mean, and outside the tents, I mean, I don't know where that ever ended up as far as what was written off and what was fixed. And that was another thing. I didn't realize the Wick family. I didn't realize in between breaks. I know Kyle was just disappearing. And, well, where did Kyle go? I didn't realize he was going back to the trailer trying to piece together the easy ups throughout the week.
Yeah, big thanks to them. That was when we were all running around getting everything situated. I think Connor, Kyle, and a couple others were sitting there repairing our easy ups so that when we put a couple of them up the next day, we still had them.
Yeah.
So that was a huge help.
Yeah, and again, it just goes back to that family, just that family atmosphere. And no, again, I hope that kind of memory lives with me for a long time, because at the end of it all, yeah, it was pretty crappy, but walking away from it, it was a great memory.
Yeah, I think it kind of symbolizes the passion and, the kind of atmosphere we try to create under the GFC tent, for sure. Yeah.
Now, speaking of GFC, could you talk about any of your future plans? I don't know where to go next.
I mean, as far as future plans go, really it's just to continue to grow the brand, on the manufacturer side, on the racing team side, and just trying to get the GFC go-kart everywhere we can. It's not just about winning races. It's about developing the product and, training new drivers and, helping out dealers and things like that. It's really just continuing to do what Gary's been doing.
Yeah. And speaking of dealers, I didn't realize you were down at, in Fontana this past week working with, is it fair to say that Formula Works is your largest dealer?
As far as go-karts and things like that, I'm not necessarily in a position where I know all the details of that. I know we have a bunch of dealers that all do a great job. Tony has just always got about, anywhere from 8 to 16 guys, it seems, when I go down to those LA races to help him.
Yeah.
So I can kind of go down there and act as a representative of the GFC brand. And so to say, Gary was up in Redding this past weekend doing a test, representing GFC. And then I could also be down in Southern California representing GFC at the same time at their Tri-C Karters race.
Yeah. And then Tony and his group, I mean, they do a great job with their program. So I'm pretty sure they were happy to see you, but also knowing that they can do a good job on their own. It's kind of like that added representation, right? It's like, hey, thanks for buying chassis from us. And by the way, Sonny's here to help. What can he do?
Yeah, exactly.
So what else you want to talk about? What's your favorite road food? When you're on the road,
favorite?
Yeah, what's your go-to for road snacks?
Oh man, I do like beef jerky. Definitely a beef jerky snacker on the road.
Beef jerky and energy drinks.
I'm not a big energy. See, I've moved towards coffee in the last couple of years now. I just drink black coffee, honestly. I've grown to love coffee. Yep.
Yeah, actually, as we were doing the sound check for this podcast, I was drinking my coffee while eating beef jerky.
There you go. That's a nice way to start the day.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some, so this is Norcal Karters podcast. You're Norcal Karter alumni. I mean, you got started in Northern California. What's one of your favorite Norcal tracks and why?
One of my favorite Norcal tracks, I mean, to be honest, it's kind of hard to choose. I like all of them for different reasons. I definitely had ones that I was more competitive at, and you ask any driver a track they like, it always seems like it's a track they're fast at. That usually makes it a little easier. I always like going to Dixon. I think it's great for conditioning. It's always consistent. The track surface and everything just stays consistent throughout the season. So you're always able to get some good testing in there. You're not fighting track conditions or things like that. I always loved racing at Davis. I just loved driving and finding my way around the bumps or, the curbing and everything. It's a tricky little track. But all of them really, Prairie City, Stockton, we're going to Redding this weekend for the KPX. All the tracks are, I love all of our Norcal tracks and the way they are, just tight and technical. I think it teaches the driver so much. So really, I can't say I could pick a favorite one to go to.
So if I was to say, what's your favorite thing about Reno? We could do that with every track in Northern California or surrounding areas. So what is your favorite part about Reno?
Oh man, my favorite part about Reno, that's a good track too. I got to race up in Reno 2 years ago for the first time and a long time, and I enjoyed it up there. Track was fun. It's pretty good on the tire wear. It's not too bad there. And probably my favorite part about Reno is just being in Reno. It's one of the few tracks in Northern California where you're pretty close to, a real fun area to go out with the team guys at the end of the day. So I'd say just being up in Reno is usually, fun on its own.
Got it. Yeah, and that's a good point too. Yeah, you travel a lot, so you've been to places that are, it's 30 minutes away from the nearest anything.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely grow to like certain racetracks more than others, especially when you're on the mechanic side, not for like the on-track product, because like you look at, say, Newcastle is an amazing facility, but I spent about 3 weeks there last year. And when you sit at the truck stop, every once in a while you're like, man, I wouldn't mind, changing up the scenery a little bit, but it's all part of it. Every track has their pros and cons, and it's just kind of how it is.
Yeah, no, it's, for a while Blue Max was kind of my adopted home track. I started out at Dixon years and years ago. But then I moved and being out near the Sacramento area, Blue Max kind of became my adoptive home track. And this sounds so stupid, but my favorite thing about going to Blue Max was I had my routine. I would exit Mace Boulevard. I'd stop at the Chevron station to get gas for my lawnmower, Briggs & Stratton. And then I would stop at the Nugget Market to get my deli sandwich. And I would eat half for breakfast and half for lunch. And it sounds so stupid, but that little routine added a lot of value to going to Blue Max for me. It's just like,
yeah, there you go. You got your daily schedule. It's consistent.
That's right. And while they were making my sandwich, I would go over and I'd grab 1 gallon of water, and I would grab one energy drink or yerba mate tea or whatever stimulus in a can I could find that I liked. And that was just my routine, and I really, really dug it. And when I'm looking for other tracks to go out and drive, I personally just suck at Prairie City. When I was younger, I didn't have a lot of track time there. I always just showed up just for races. But more lately, over the past few months, I've been going out there a lot more. And I've had to look around for that routine. It's like, okay, well, where do I go to get my sandwich? Where do I go to do this? It's like, okay, I got to find that routine because I take the back roads into Prairie City. And there's nothing between, my house and Prairie City on the back roads, but it's only 30 minutes from my door.
Yeah. Prairie City is definitely, that was one of my more difficult tracks growing up too. It's a really twisty technical configuration there. There's a lot of guys that a lot of the club racers from Prairie City, they spend a lot of time there, and there's so many little secrets with how to drive the track and the gearing, with it being such a tight track. And it was always a tough one to compete at for me as well.
Yeah, I just never figured it out, and I always blame the cart. And then now that I'm getting more and more laps out there, I just understand. It's like, well, if you're six inches over, the cart feels completely different. So it's not the cart's fault.
Yeah. 6 inches at a lot of our Norcal tracks is a lot, though, because they're not all the widest tracks. That's a large percentage of the racetrack.
That is. Yeah, that is very true. All right. How do you want to wrap this thing up?
Well, really, I just thank you for having me on. I'm excited to keep on working here full time now with GFC. I think it's exciting. I'm super excited, and I can't wait to kind of see where it goes, really. I'm happy to be focusing on, solely one brand and helping to grow it. I truly can't wait for the next race.
Well, when I saw the announcement, I wasn't even surprised, because you're just a workhorse out there. You're always working. You have that passion for karting, which I think that's the biggest thing. You can't do what you do. You can't do what Gary does. You can't do what anyone else on the industry side can't do it without the passion, because it can be such a hard business.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's always, I always laugh, you know, say a mechanic or something and be complaining about changing the third axle for the day. And I'm like, man, like, look around. We're at the go-kart track. You're changing your third axle. Is your day really that tough? You know, and for me, it's so rewarding to see all the hard work pay off. You know, when we win, like, we'll spend 2 weeks preparing for Vegas, and to go and win Vegas, it's all worth it. You know, it doesn't matter. I don't do any of this, you know, for my own personal gain. It's just I love to see it, right? I love to see it all take place.
Yeah, that's called passion.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's you have to have it. And yeah, I'm so proud of you. It's it just, again, I remember you as a little kid out there at Kinsman, and you figured out a way to make a living in karting, and it's so cool to see.
Yeah, I'm super grateful for all the people I've had help me along the way, and you know, every job I've had has been a learning experience, and that's kind of how I try to look at it all and make the most of every opportunity. And you know, it's been great to work with Gary over the last couple of years. He's taught me so much and really taken me under his wing. You know, is one of the more, if not the most knowledgeable guys right now in the United States when it comes to competitive kart racing. So super grateful.
Yeah, well, and it's also just that dedication to his name's on the go-kart, so I hope he has that desire and motivation to work hard at it, and I've seen it firsthand, and he does. But I know you and I can't go into too much detail on what happens underneath the tent, but there's constant thinking and innovation and testing going on. That was probably my biggest takeaway, was just, you know, how many times were we there till 9, 10 o'clock at night? Not because we had to rebuild a go-kart or, you know, had to fix something. It's like, hey, let's try this for tomorrow. Let's do this. Let's see how this works. And it's really neat to see that you're an integral part of that program.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, you know, when we're there, say 10, 11 at night, the biggest thing to me is that no one's there complaining or having that look on their face. They want to go back to the hotel or they want to go get food or whatever. Everyone's there right now because they want to be there. They want to be more competitive the next day. It's, yeah, I mean, really the passion throughout the entire tent is what makes the team the team.
Yeah. And it's infectious.
It is.
In a good way, if that's such a thing. Can you be infectious in a good way?
Yeah, I think so.
Or is that just the wrong term to use nowadays?
Yeah. I see where you're going.
Get a T-shirt that says infectious, then underneath, too soon.
Yeah, definitely too soon. I mean, we're still in the middle of this, but we've been fortunate enough in the go-kart world to not be affected as tough as other people with the whole pandemic going down. You know, we really had 2 months where we couldn't race, and since then all the promoters and everyone have done a pretty good job of getting us all back on the road and get the show going on with the kart races.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's wrap this thing up with a tie-in to Norcal Karters. So those that are listening, you can go to norcalkarters.com to listen to this podcast or download it with your favorite podcast player. But what are you doing the next couple of weeks as far as what is your race calendar?
The next couple of weeks, let's see, we've got Reading KPX round 1 this weekend.
Yep.
I know in the
April
next couple
10th and
weeks
11th.
we've got, I know with Formula Works down in Southern California, there's LAKC coming up. We've got Pro Kart Challenge. I believe there's a Sonoma Rock in there somewhere.
Yeah.
The Challenge of the Americas just concluded. So right now, regionally in Northern California area, we don't have a ton of national level racing going on, but we'll obviously keep on pushing and learning everything we can at these next couple of regional events.
Well, and there wasn't a race this past weekend, but you mentioned that, well, let me rephrase that. In Northern California, there wasn't a race this past weekend, but you mentioned Gary was out at Reading testing.
Yeah, correct. He was out at Reading testing, and I was down at Tri-C Carters.
Yep, supporting customers in SoCal.
Correct.
Well, thanks for joining us. Again, I'm proud of what you're doing. It's glad to hear you have a full-time gig with one team. And any parting words?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks to you, Jason, for everything you're doing with Norcal Karters. I think it's cool to see you try to grow the sport around here and really be someone that's just doing something. You know, I know you do this out of passion as well. So I appreciate you having me on, and I hope the listeners enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's part of the project. It's just kind of hitting all aspects of karting, but focusing on local stuff. And I want to get into the stories. I love the stories. You've known me long enough. I love talking. If I could talk about myself, that's even better. But it was either you or Harrison. I was like, I need to have more mechanics on the show. Because it's most mechanics were ex-racers, and they have just such a different perspective than a promoter or a racer. So thanks for joining. I mean, I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I did too. Again, thank you for having me, Jason.
Yeah, no problem, Sonny. All right, I'm going to hit end, but hang tight for a few moments.